Hey, gorgeous. Come on in, pull up a chair, take your coat off, kick your shoes off if you want to. Nobody's judging anything in here. The kettle's already on, obviously. Because that's what we do, isn't it? That's just what we do as women of a certain age especially. First sign of any emotion whatsoever. Any emotion, happiness, sadness, confusion, mild inconvenience, existential dread at 11 in the morning. We put the kettle on, someone dies, kettle on, someone gets engaged, kettle on. You get a letter from the doctor with the word results in the subject line. And your heart does that little clench thing. Kettle on. You look at your reflection in the bathroom mirror at 7 in the morning before you've had your tea, and you genuinely cannot identify what decade that chin belongs to. Kettle on. It is the universal answer to everything. And I am not even slightly embarrassed about it because honestly, hot tea solves more than people give it credit for. And I'm so glad you're here today. I really am. So pour yourself something warm. Wrap both hands around the mug the way you do when you really mean it. Get comfortable. And let me tell you about a Tuesday, just a regular, ordinary, unremarkable Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday that wakes up in the morning and doesn't even try, doesn't have any ambition whatsoever, just exists flatly in the middle of the week going through the motions. Because on this particular Tuesday, I had a grocery list. I had written it the night before, carefully, with intention, like a responsible adult woman who has her life together and does things like write grocery lists the night before with categories, actual categories, produce over here, dairy over there, tinned things in their own little section. I even wrote, check what we have before buying more pasta, which is the kind of note a genuinely organized person leaves for herself. I was proud of this list. I'm not going to lie to you. I looked at it that morning and thought, yes, this is the energy we're bringing today. And I got in the car, drove to the shop, found a parking space on the first try, which honestly already felt suspicious, grabbed a basket, walked through those sliding doors, and reached into my bag for the list. And the list was not in my bag. The list was not in my coat pocket. The list was not in my jeans pocket. The list was not tucked into my phone case or folded up in my wallet or somehow wedged between a receipt from 2019 and a lip balm I thought I'd lost. The list was nowhere on my person because the list was sitting on the kitchen counter at home next to the kettle, being absolutely useless, just lying there minding its own business while I stood in the entrance of the supermarket getting in everyone's way. And I thought, fine, this is fine. I am a grown woman. I have a university degree. I have raised children. I have navigated things considerably more complicated than a grocery run. I know what we need. I have been feeding human beings in this household for the better part of 3 decades. I do not need a piece of paper to tell me what milk is. I have this completely under control. And I came home 40 minutes later with 3 different kinds of crackers because I couldn't decide between them and the anxiety of choosing felt too big. So I just got all 3, a bag of pine nuts that I picked up with absolutely no plan for whatsoever, something called a dragon fruit that I bought purely out of spite because it was sitting there looking all exotic and unbothered. And I thought, fine, you're coming with me. 2 types of fancy olive oil because they were on offer. And at a certain point in your life, you simply become someone who stockpiles olive oil. A very nice bar of dark chocolate that I told myself was for baking, but we both know was not for baking. And no milk, no bread, no butter, no eggs, none of the 7 things we actually needed. None of them, not a single one. And I put my bags down on the kitchen counter. I looked at that dragon fruit sitting there all pink and spiky and smug, and something in me just gave way. I just started crying, not pretty crying, not a dignified single tear rolling gracefully down one cheek like in a film, No, the real kind, the kind that arrives without warning and takes over your whole face and makes sounds you didn't plan on making. The kind where your nose immediately gets involved and your chin does that wobbling thing that you genuinely cannot control no matter how old you are. And I stood there in my kitchen crying at a piece of fruit and I couldn't even fully explain why. And my husband walked in from the other room, took in the scene, me, the dragon fruit, the 3 types of crackers, the general atmosphere of a woman on the edge. And he looked at me and he looked at the fruit, and without saying a single word, he very slowly backed out of the room and disappeared. And honestly, that was the correct response. That was 28 years of marriage paying dividends right there, he knew. He has always known when the thing happening is not actually about the thing that appears to be happening. And here is what I want to tell you. Here is the thing I want to lean across this table and say directly to your face because you deserve to hear it plainly. It was never about the grocery list, not even a little bit. The grocery list was innocent. The grocery list was just the thing that happened to be standing in the road when everything finally came to a head. It was the last small straw on a very large pile of straws that I had been quietly, efficiently, cheerfully adding to all week without acknowledging what I was building. Because that week had been genuinely a lot. My back had been aching for 2 solid weeks, and I had been ignoring it the way we ignore things, the way we've been trained to ignore things, just pushing through, taking ibuprofen, telling ourselves it'll sort itself out like a disagreement at a family Christmas that everyone agrees to just not mention again. My sleep had been strange and fractured in that specific perimenopausal way where you fall asleep fine and then wake up at 3 a.m, absolutely convinced you've forgotten something important, lying there in the dark, doing a full audit of every responsibility you have ever had in your entire life. I had had a phone call with my mother earlier in the week that left me feeling about 17 years old in the worst possible way. The specific kind of 17 where you're simultaneously too much and not enough, and you put the phone down and sit there for a moment just breathing. I was behind on 3 things I had promised to 3 different people, and I was carrying that low, quiet, persistent guilt about it that doesn't scream at you. It just sits in your chest like wet sand, heavy and still and always there. And I was tired, not the kind of tired that a good night's sleep fixes, the bone tired, the soul tired, the kind of tired that has been accumulating in layers over months and years and decades of being the person who holds things together and gets things done and shows up and keeps going. And the list was just the list. The list was just Tuesday's contribution to the pile. And I want to ask you something, and I really want you to sit with it before you answer, not just let it slide past you. How much are you carrying right now that you have been calling fine? How much have you quietly absorbed and filed under manageable and just got on with? Because that is what we do, because the alternative felt like too much, because someone needed you to be okay so you were okay, or at least you performed okay, convincingly enough that everyone accepted it and moved on, because we are so good at this. We are extraordinarily, almost impressively good at calling things fine when they are not even remotely fine. It is practically a superpower, a terrible, exhausting, invisible superpower that we have been practicing since we were girls, and nobody ever tells you the cost of it. Nobody sits you down at any point and says, by the way, all of that absorbing and managing and pushing through has a tab. And the tab does eventually come due, and sometimes it comes due in a supermarket car park, and sometimes it comes due in your kitchen over a piece of tropical fruit, And that is not weakness. I need you to hear that. That is not weakness. That is just what it looks like when a human being has been carrying more than she should have to carry for longer than anyone should have to carry it. And here is the other thing nobody really prepares you for about this particular season of life. And I say season, not because it's a gentle transition with a nice autumnal aesthetic. I say season because it does eventually move, even when it doesn't feel like it will. But what nobody adequately prepares you for is the emotional texture of it. They tell you about the physical changes. They mention it in the way people mention things. They find slightly awkward to discuss, sort of briskly and in passing, like a footnote at the bottom of the page of your life. And yes, the physical things are real, and yes, they matter, and yes, we should talk about those too, and we will. But what they don't tell you about is the strange emotional landscape of being in your 50s. The way some days you feel more yourself than you have ever felt in your entire life. Like you have finally shed about 47 layers of other people's opinions and expectations, and you are just standing there in your own skin going, oh, this is actually who I am. I quite like her. And other days you feel like you're standing in a hallway between two rooms, and the room behind you is full and warm and familiar. Everything you built and raised and survived and became. And the room in front of you is just open, unknown, unwritten, and the map you used to navigate by doesn't quite apply anymore, and nobody's handed you a new one yet, and they don't tell you about the way your relationship with time shifts, the way you can be in the middle of an ordinary moment and suddenly be aware of it in a way you weren't when you were younger, aware of its particular quality of light, its texture, the way your daughter laughs at something on her phone in the next room, the way the garden looks on a September afternoon. And there is something bittersweet about that awareness that is hard to name, but very easy to feel. And they definitely don't tell you about standing in the bathroom trying to remember why you walked in there, which happens more than you'd like and is maddening in a very specific way, or the way you can be telling a story and the word you want, the exact right word, just removes itself from the available options mid-sentence, and you have to stand there describing the thing around the edges of the word while your brain quietly checks its pockets, and you wonder quietly to yourself, is this just normal? Is this just what a busy life in a body that has been through a lot feels like? Or is something wrong with me? And I want to say this to you clearly, the way a woman who loves you would say it across a kitchen table. You are not losing it. You are not losing your sharpness or your edge or yourself. You are a whole, complicated, layered, magnificent human being navigating a whole, complicated, layered, genuinely quite demanding life. And some days are just hard. They are just hard days. And having a hard day is not a referendum on who you are or what you're made of. It is simply Tuesday doing what Tuesday does. And the thing I learned slowly, reluctantly, over time, the way I learned most of the things that actually stick, is that how you get through the hard days is almost never what you think it is when you're in it. Because when you're in it, you think you need to toughen up or push harder or get yourself together. You think the answer is more discipline or a better system or just deciding to stop being affected by things. But that's not it. That's almost never it. And after I'd had my cry that day, a good thorough one, covered all the bases, got it all out, I washed my face, dried my hands on the tea towel, put the kettle on, obviously. And I sat down with my mug and I looked at that dragon fruit on my counter, that ridiculous spiky pink thing that I had bought for no good reason whatsoever, and something in me settled a little bit. And what I've come to understand about navigating the hard days is this. First, lower the bar. And I know we resist this. We are women who hold things together, and lower the bar sounds like giving up, but it isn't. It's just being honest about your actual capacity on any given day. And on a hard day, the bar is drink some water, say one kind thing to someone. Don't start any new fires. Close the laptop at a reasonable hour. That's a win. That counts. That is genuinely enough. Second, say the actual thing out loud to someone you trust, not the managed version, not the "I've just been a bit tired lately" version, the real version. The "I cried in my kitchen over a dragon fruit and I genuinely cannot tell you why" version, because the moment you say the real thing, it changes. It stops being this enormous private thing that you're managing alone. And it becomes just a story, just a thing that happened, just a Tuesday. And usually the person you say it to laughs with you and then tells you their version of the same story. And suddenly you're both sitting there feeling about 40% lighter than you did before. And third, and this one took me the longest because it goes against something very deep in how most of us were shaped. Stop apologizing for your capacity. You are allowed to have a limit. You are allowed to say, "I cannot take on one more thing right now," without tacking on a paragraph of explanation and apology and assurance that you'll do better next week. You are allowed to have a Tuesday. And here is the truth underneath all of it. The thing I most want you to carry with you when you leave here today. The dragon fruit, by the way, tasted like nothing, like genuinely, absolutely nothing. Like someone described the concept of a fruit to a scientist who had only ever read about fruit in textbooks and had never actually eaten one. It was the most pointless flavor experience I have ever had. And I laughed so hard telling my friend about it the next day that my tea came out of my nose, which is both disgusting and completely worth it. And that is the thing, that is always the thing. The hard days become the best stories. They become the thing you tell the friend who calls you on a Thursday sounding flat, and you say, "Wait, let me tell you about my Tuesday." And they laugh and you laugh and something loosens. And you made it through every single hard day you have ever had. Every single one. The ones that seemed actually impossible, the ones where you couldn't see the other side, the quiet, unglamorous ones that nobody witnessed and nobody applauded and that didn't make it into anyone's highlights. Those days are yours. You survived them, every single one, and you are still here, still showing up, still putting the kettle on, still reaching for connection, still finding the funny in the terrible, still sitting down at the end of a long day and thinking about what you need and what matters and who you want to be. And that is not nothing. That is, in fact, everything. So if today is a Tuesday for you, if you came here carrying something and calling it fine, I just want you to know you don't have to call it fine in here. You're allowed to put it down for a little while. Be gentle with yourself today. Really, actually gentle, the way you would be with someone you love, and maybe write your grocery list and also take a photo of it on your phone. Just a little insurance policy, just one small gift to your future self. I'll see you next time, lovely. Take such good care.